Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a Star Wars Legion podcast bringing you the latest news, general perspective, and competitive discussion.
Hello and welcome back to the Notorious Scoundrels. My name is Jay Shalansky and we have fired Kyle for not putting me in the proper order.
Oh, snap.
No, just kidding.
Fall
Kyle
nine.
needed a break. You guys are too much for him. It was overwhelming, all the questions he was getting about Shadow Collective. Something. I don't know. Something like that. So Kyle's off this week. So I am joined by John Bushfax Bushman and Lucas Double Bounty U-Stick.
Double bounty U-Stick? Is that what we're going with? All right.
Yeah, why not? How you guys
That was
doing?
the OG. That was my first Fifth Trooper article, was how to play double bounty.
Oh, okay.
Well, and he's been mentioning it again, ever since these card upgrades. So I figured I'd give him I don't know. I don't think
I'm ready. Got to put bounty back on the table.
Listen, he's only here for a couple more episodes. I got to make him feel as good as possible.
I know Jay's being so nice to me now that I'm leaving.
Right.
Weird.
Yeah, well, I want you to. It's always your last memory of things, right? That is your lasting memory. So, like in a couple of months, I'll be like, man, that Jay guy and that Fifth Trooper was a great experience.
Yeah, all the bullying and heckling, I'll just not remember it at all. I'm like, man, Jay was so sweet to me, helping me out the last few casts.
And he got me on them coffees at Adepticon, and then he was just like so nice to me the last couple of weeks. Yeah.
You did keep me nice and caffeinated at Adepticon.
That's right. Yeah. So here we are. We got some stuff on the docket today. We're finally gonna get to Force users. This is not a joke. This is for real.
This is not a joke.
I've wanted to get to Force users this whole time. It's been Kyle that said no, just so everybody knows. So if you want to be upset with anyone, it's Kyle.
Just bash Kyle while he's gone.
Yeah.
Kyle won't listen to this. It's fine.
We're gonna get to that. It actually it works out, with the Shadow Collective and the new mall lists, like that. There's some stuff there. We're going to talk about what potentially we could see as far as new meta wise coming up at Gen Con and Nova, or if you have any events or tournaments coming up in the next couple months, what you could potentially see out there, what you should potentially bring. So we'll talk about that and just some other general horseplay stuff. But I'm going to get to housekeeping here, but I'm going to use the podcast to complain about something right now. I'm really irritated by a couple of things. So I have an alarm system, and we have a smoke detector, and for whatever reason, that decided to go off at midnight last night, but it didn't make any noise. So like you couldn't hear the smoke detector. It just alerted them that there was a fire at my house. And so my phone hasn't been ringing, like taking phone calls. It just tells me I have missed calls. So they called, and the fire department just showed up at my house last night at like 12:30. And I was like, when I tell you I was dead asleep, like we're doing renovations at the house, I was like out of just like gone. So that was a real upsetting evening. And then it did it again at 3:00. This time it made noise though, so that was good. And then it did it again at 5:30. So I had a real irritating night.
Start running on fumes right now.
Yeah. I'm just like, I'm real, like, and then it's just like, like things just all happen at once, like this fox is stealing my chickens. I'm out there like waiting for him with a gun in the backyard. Like that's not working. I'm going to be honest with everybody. I don't think I would have actually shot him if I saw him. I really like animals. So it was just something that made everybody feel good. Like I was protecting the chickens, but I don't think I would have actually like pulled the trigger because I'm a big fan of animals, even when they eat my other animals. This is crazy.
Too soft.
Yeah. And then there was, let's see, what else is happening with me? Oh, yeah. We were renovating. So we had this wood stove. I don't know if you guys have ever like tried to move a wood stove. They're like 900 pounds of just cast iron. Well, you guys live in very nice, warm places, so you don't even need wood stoves. You guys don't even know what a wood stove is or why.
I was gonna ask, as you're describing this, I was like, is this a stove made out of wood? That doesn't seem good to catch on fire.
It's a
bad idea.
Made out of just tears and everything heavy. It's just iron, cast iron stove with like bricks in it and stuff. It's the heaviest thing. They're like 800 pounds, man. And so I'm trying to move this thing, and we put it up and we're selling it. And this guy's like, hey, I'm gonna come get it. I'm like, okay, you're gonna need like 5 guys. Like this thing's like 800 pounds. He called me not too long ago and is like, hey, I'm gonna bring me and my elderly father-in-law to come get this thing. And I go,
no, you're not.
What? I go, I have 4 young boys who are all very strong, who work out all the time, and we barely moved it through the house. And he's like, yep, I'm gonna come and get it. And I was like, dude, this thing's 800 pounds. And so then he was like, hey, do you think I could come later and you and your boys could help me? It's like, yeah, man, like, good Lord. Anyways, these are all my problems, everybody.
Yes. Instead of hiring a therapist, Jay just tells us about all the stuff every time we start a cast.
Everybody says they like it when I talk about stuff going on in the house. Well, here we are. For those of you that don't know, a wood stove is a big cast iron box. You put wood in it and you light it on fire, and that's what heats your home. That's what we do up here in the north, where the winters are awful and it's so cold that, you can't even breathe sometimes. And so we get these big wood stoves. We have regular heaters, but sometimes you need supplemental heat too.
It's not so easy here in California. Sometimes at night, the ocean breeze gets a little chilly and you have to put a hoodie on. It's a hard life.
It's rough.
It
is rough.
Terrible. I'm trying so nice to be nice to you. You're making it so difficult. All right, let's get to housekeeping, and then why you're all actually here, the Legion. All right, housekeeping. We are still working on our Gar Saxon shield giveaway. Listen to me, everyone who's been reaching out to me, asking me and saying, hey, I haven't gotten it yet. Yeah, listen, we have over 3,000 now that we're sending out. I'm doing roughly 500 to 700 at a time because it's an arduous process for us. Needless to say, I wasn't 100% ready for over 3,000. I thought maybe we were going to get like 1,000. And so I've had to print more cards. And so we're working on it. We're getting them out. If you haven't gotten yours yet, don't worry. If you filled out the form, we're going to get to you. I just don't know when. Lucas is still waiting for his, and he literally works for us. There's a couple things. The time for us to get them out, that we're packing them really nice. We're actually putting them in little plastic, like resealable bags so that they don't get chewed up in the mail. Postage, the printing out of everybody's addresses, getting them out the door. International's a whole different field and postage type. So we're going through them. Please trust me, you will get them. It's just taking a little bit longer than probably you would like. It's taking longer than I would like, and
it's free.
We're
losing money on it. This is just for you guys.
Yeah.
So
because we love you. And I still love you. Just be patient with my love. Okay. It'll take some time. And we're just mailing them like regular letters. So it could take, depending on where you live, it could take some time to get to you. So they're coming. Another great news. Mats are due in tomorrow. So hopefully we'll be able to get mats out Wednesday or Thursday to you. So all of you who have been waiting and calling me and emailing me and saying you've had pre-orders since April or March. I know. Listen, shipping is a nightmare right now. The world is a nightmare right now as far as shipping is concerned and logistics. So we're just getting our mats. We anticipated they would be in May. That didn't happen. It's now going to be closer to July. This is the world we live in, and we'll anticipate that for the future. So that ideally won't happen again. We'll probably just have them and we'll just sell them instead of doing pre-sales in the future. So so that's that. Don't forget legionhq.thefifthtrooper.com for all your list building needs. legionquickguide.com for quick reference. I've seen a bunch of Facebook posts, people asking if there's like a quick way to get the rules. Yeah, legionquickguide.com. We've got all the RRG up there and links to all the forums rulings.
That's huge.
Yeah. So
the forums is, as someone who TOs for local stuff, that is such a godsend, because when you're on your phone at an event trying to find those rules forum stuff to get a clarification, yeah, chef's kiss.
Yeah. So what, and so that's a new addition to that tool. We've got kill points. Legion HQ now.
Some of the recent updates on Legion HQ have been pretty dope. There's a kill points button at the bottom of your list. When you have a list, it says calculate kill points with a little capital Sigma. And when you click on it, then you can literally toggle each unit, and it just counts up the kill points for when you're playing a game or when you finished a game that tied on victory points. It's huge.
Yeah. And I'm glad we did that. Legion stats, the fifth trooper. So these are all the stats from events. We're constantly making updates to that. John and Dr. Power Slam there. For those of you listening, the reason we keep calling him by his Discord name is because I can't pronounce his name in English. So
I know how to spell it, but I don't
yeah. And he's okay with that. So he goes by Dr. Power Slam.
When I head over to Europe, I'll meet him in person. I can learn the pronunciation and
and get back to us.
I'll get back to you guys.
He's been doing a great job on Legion stats. So we have all these great tools, all free to use. Also, our Legion Stream tool, legionstream.thefifthtrooper.com. So everything's free for you to use. Go check those out. Let's see what else. We're encroaching on July, so Stormtide is going to start back up here about mid to end July. Very excited about that. So we're going to get that going again. If you haven't signed up for Stormtide, you can sign up now. If you can start right with season 2, quarter 1, you get the first 3 boxes. So you could get those now and then start your monthly if you wanted to. Also, we sell Legion now product on our website, so go check that out. And then finally, if you like our blog, if you like our podcasts, if you've been enjoying all this free content, all these free tools, please support us on Patreon. It's patreon.com/thefifthtrooper. That's how we pay everybody for doing all this great stuff. We don't pay people in internet fame. We pay them in cold, hard cash. So, we try. We try to make everybody happy for doing hard work and amazing work, and all these tools, all the blog, the podcast, everything's been so great. So please support these guys. They need your support because none of them have real jobs. It's all just blog writing. That's a joke. They all have better jobs than you would think. But it's nice to give them pay. So, all right. Lucas, what do we got today? Lucas was taking diligent notes.
A very diligent 2 bullet point notes. You got first Force user lists, and how to build around Force users, and then the new meta and what to expect. Because I think this is probably the biggest drop we've had since the Clone Wars that will shake things up. Whole bunch of new units, entirely new factions, units that can be run in every faction. So I think this will shake things up quite a bit.
Well, what do you want to talk about first?
I guess we could start off with Force users. I think as a primer for talking about Force user lists, I think there's kind of 2 main archetypes when you're making a Force user army. There is the threat saturation Force user army, where you have your Force user and a whole bunch of other aggressive threats, such as Vader with dewbacks. You can do this with like Luke and Wookiees.
Dewbacks are threats.
They are. John is a dewback hater.
It's news to me. Continue.
Vader dewbacks, Yoda Wookiees, etc. Armies that have a whole bunch of threats, and essentially, if you focus on the Force user, you get hit by the other melee units. If you focus on the other units, you get hit by the Force user. The second big archetype I see is a more what I would call like a scalpel Force user. This is more like the Luke gunline, or you could do a Vader gunline or an Anakin Padme gunline. The idea being you have kind of this backup force, and your Force user is a playmaker or, flanking threat in that. It's less of a rush everything in and deal with it. You have something built around it. So I think each of those play a little differently. So it's worth kind of separating how they both build out.
All right. Well, let's talk about the second one. So that, I think we could start there. Jon and I have run variations of that, which is more gunline support of force users. I think for me, you guys can kind of jump in and correct me, but the biggest thing when running that is you need at least range 4 threat a lot of times, just because what you're doing is your gun line is a little bit, I'm going to put this in quotes, you guys who are listening can't see this, but air quotes, weaker. Your gun line's a little weaker of units, and so you're holding them back and kind of shooting and causing suppression, causing them to make decisions while your force users kind of moving into position to strike.
Yeah. So range 4 definitely helps. It's a good counter. It's a good balance because if you're not doing the melee saturation one that Lucas talked about, because range 4 is going to be shooting melee for almost a whole extra turn before melee gets in. Another important thing, maybe, in my opinion, maybe the most important thing, unless you're running Yoda or Palpatine, probably, you need at least 10 activations. Having less means that when you're trying to get your force user in, because at least like 75% of the time, you need your force user to make money and go across the table and kill things.
Yeah.
If you have under 10 activations, then on average, every activation under 10 is one more activation that your force user is going to have to run out there in the middle and get shot at before it gets to act again.
Yeah, I think that's a really key difference between these two. Is in the more gunline focused army, you have to be very careful and preserve your force user because there's no one backing them up, right?
That's also
if you're running in with Luke and there's a gunline behind him, Luke is taking shots for no one at that point. Whereas, right, if it's Vader running in with dewbacks, even though you might be roughly at 9 activations, you'd rather be higher. If they're taking shots into Vader, that's shots that aren't hitting your dewbacks or I or G or whatever that's coming in. Of course, you don't want to take hits, but you can get away with lower activations in a threat saturation, whereas I really don't think you can in a gunline focused.
Yeah. Well, and you still want your gunline to advance, even in the gunline force option, because yeah, you want them to have to choose between shooting your force user or your gunline. You don't ever want to give your opponent a single unit that's all they can shoot at, because that's bad strats.
And I've found a lot of times with so my strategy with my list, the Luke Sabine gunline list, is that even sometimes if I lose Luke and Sabine, both of them, by the time I've lost them, that the gun line is enough to hold up for the rest of the rest of the game and can go do the objectives and can take care of the business that needs to be taken care of. There's been a number of games where I've lost both Luke and Sabine and still won handedly because the gun line, because they're sitting so far back and they're not in direct threat to what's happening, that they're able to just kind of plink off mini by mini, and then Luke and Sabine clean up a little bit, and then if they die, if I've made a mistake or if something just happens or by design they die, that there's still plenty of units left for me, generally 8, that can continue on with the mission. And because really at the end of the day, as long as you're going to win the objectives, who cares if your force users die? Like, if you know you're going to win the objective, if you sacrifice Luke in this, for instance, then you sacrifice Luke. It's about winning the game.
So I think that has been true for a long time, but I think there's one thing in the meta that is going to shift that a little bit.
Here we go.
Bounty.
What do you think that is? What do you think that is, Lucas?
So bounty hunters all just got a buff, and they can be played in more factions. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot more bounty hunters. And in most armies, what Jay said is totally true. But one thing that I got to point out is in a bounty army, they're often going to bounty your aggressive threats because either you play passively with them and they essentially negate your aggressive threat, or when you do become aggressive with that unit, there's a threat of it dying and scoring a point. So if you are playing against a bounty list, you can't let, your Luke or Sabine die on the last turn, sets a point. Like in Recover the Supplies, if Luke goes down, even if you have an extra box, you could go down to a tie on boxes, win on points. So you got to be really careful. That's one big difference. Often it's less of a big deal, right? If your force user dies right at the end, because you might have already gained enough advantage on, the objective. Like if, Vader goes down on turn 6 and before he goes down, he's force pushing and chopping all his units off of KP or something. But right, if he gets bountied, it doesn't matter how much you did on that center KP, they just scored a point. So
of course. And I think that's absolutely something that's going to pop back up. And in the past, as Lucas knows, when you were running bounty, right, you generally speaking, that the advice that we would have given you was put your bounty on the force user. If they have a force user, put your bounty on them, because they're going to be out messing around and doing stuff, and you're going to be more likely to kill them than you are like a generic commander who's more hanging back, handing out coins, handing out tokens and stuff. Here, coins, here's some money, you fools.
Free value.
But I would agree. If you're facing double bounty specifically, then I think the paradigm changes and how you approach it. But I think single, if it's only
kill
one
the bounty hunter.
Right. If it's only one bounty hunter,
come at me, Bosk.
I think John's point is more realistic. Like if it's just Bosk or just Boba Fett or just Cad Bane, just take your force user and just head straight for him. But if it's double bounty, then it starts to shift a little bit, because now you got two people who are going to be able to collect.
Nah, just kill them both.
But I don't know which. I mean, I'm playing this list, so I guess I prefer this list that I've been playing. But I find that the really aggressive one, and John, you've played the aggressive one with Wookiees and Yoda and Wookiees and Luke, and I find that one to be a little bit more intimidating, but it has its weaknesses to like long range stuff, because it takes a while, depending on the board, it takes a while for them to get where they need to get in order to be truly effective.
So the issue with it is yes, extremely table dependent. You don't always have line of sight blockers to hop between to get across there. But if you don't need to get across there, don't. Like, sit there and wait and hide for 3 rounds until it's more late game and victory, and you could actually secure a victory point with them. Because Wookiees, 12 Wookiee bodies running at you turn 4 is pretty dang scary. It can either version works. You just takes different types of finesse.
I think that's a big mistake I see people play with these threat saturation versions, is they think I have to rush in. But the whole point of the army is when you do close that gap, they're overwhelmed. So if you just sit there, for 3 turns hiding everything, now they only have 3 turns to deal with that massive saturation of threats. So often it can be better, because it might take them, if you rush in with everything, maybe in the course of 4 to 5 turns, they can clear it all out and survive that press. But if you're able to sustain your guys, hold them till late game, they might not be able to, clear out those threats. Your units are more powerful in melee, more versatile in melee. And now you're, playing to your advantage with a bunch of melee units while you're also scoring.
Or even if they do take care of them in those last 3 rounds, that means they're probably not dealing with the objectives in the last 3 rounds. And you are, because you're moving, you're heading towards it.
All right. So with that said, let's walk through we'll do this quick. We're not going to build full lists, but we'll start with a faction and kind of pick each one of those 2 list archetypes that we're talking about and just pick some of the unit, like maybe key units we need to put around them. So let's start with rebels. I'll start. So, really there's 2 force users. There's Commander Luke and OP Luke.
Oh, okay.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
There's Commander Luke and OP Luke.
I was going to say there's one option.
But no one uses Commander Luke, right? So really
he's not a dead option, though.
I know.
But I will say that.
So no matter which
Luke
one
is
you
just
choose,
an amazing option.
He's amazing.
Really, if you're going to go for the gun line, Luke, okay, you can do what's the popular list is the DLT with the captains
with the captain and situational awareness,
right? So you're always getting dodges, and then you can dodge crits and all this stuff.
Permanent crit dodges.
Yeah. And then the other one that I like and I think doesn't get as much play as it should is vets. I think vets in the MK are really nice pieces. Having an MK gives you some options, especially with like hostage exchange against other force users. So there's some options there. You lose some other stuff, but there's some gains. Then
I think you don't have to build around the vets as much. Like John's LVO list, he was able to bring Luke, Han, Chewie, and vets because with the Rebel dodge spam army, you need to be packing vigilances. They all need to be captains with situational awareness. So you kind of have that core that stays the same. You could put in Luke or Sabine or whatever. Right?
It's not that you need to, it's that you get to build around them. The vets, the vets have an incredible weakness. They have white saves and they don't have permanent dodge, like crit dodges.
Yeah.
Like, so my LVO list worked because Chewie, in my opinion, is critical if you have a valuable gun line and you don't want to babysit it. Chewie will babysit it for you. He'll guardian everything he can.
I just what I like about the vets is you're right, they don't have that dodge spam. They do get a dodge if you give them an order, but they also surge both defense and attack, which is nice for like those attack rolls that they end up doing, like a full squad, like even without an aim of vets usually is putting through at least a couple hits. And so I always like having them as like it's a nice, I think it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It depends on what you're trying to do with your list. And mine's a much more offensive. I'm going to hold my vets back and fire from long range until they, while they're making their way towards my army, where I think the dodge spam one, you could get a little bit more closer and put position a little bit better because you got all that dodge spam, but you're hitting with a little bit less force, I think, from a attack standpoint.
Not at all. Those Mark IIs are only range 3 as well, which hampers their defense even further. I'm not trying to say don't bring them. I'm not trying to say they're not good. I'm just trying to say that once you come into range 3, almost anything can shoot you.
Yes.
And if you're getting shot with white saves, every hit is a.
I agree. The thing with the Mark IIs that helps a lot is they do have Overwatch, they do have fire support. So there's a lot of things that they make up for from an attack perspective, that they can kind of create these zones that people think twice before they start moving into range 3, which is helpful. But yes, I think that it's your play style, really, what it comes down to between those 2 types of units.
They're also significantly cheaper. It's kind of funny that the technically elite option is supposed to be the vets and the Mark IIs are the cheaper option than the captain DLTs, which is why you can fit Chewie and Han. So it gives you a little more points leeway that you can have, Luke, Chewie, and Han in that army because the vets and Mark IIs are a little cheaper.
And then I would say, I think this is a non-negotiable with these lists, is snipers. Like, I think you have to put snipers in these lists because they need them.
Activation padding, if nothing else.
And also that it's that nice like whittled down of wounds on the way in that only snipers are really good at doing.
Wait, I thought you hated snipers, Jay.
Oh no, I hate Empire snipers.
Oh, so different from the Rebel snipers.
They are. They're completely different.
Forgot.
Dude, they roll so bad. Do not let Kyle's rolling confuse anyone here. That Empire snipers are the worst. And
We're
speaking
gonna have
of the
Jay
worst,
roll on camera one of these
oh,
days.
dude, it'll be so bad. You guys will be like, "How do you win any games?" I'm like, I don't know. I don't. Okay, let's do Empire. So Lucas is our.
Are we gonna do each faction and gunline and each
I'm
faction
sorry,
and threat saturation?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. So now we got.
This is what happens when we don't have Kyle here. We're all discombobulated.
Yeah, we're gonna do the melee version of that. So you take Luke again. Boom, you got Luke. You got OP Luke. So you start running...
always at least force push.
Yeah.
Every force user. If you don't have force push, that's like it's a huge missed opportunity at least.
I really like saber throw on OP Luke. I've been a convert of that. I didn't have it for a while, and now I do, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is much better. Like
it does have its place.
Yeah,
I think in the gun line it's really good. In the threat saturation, I'm not sure if you want it as much since you're planning on going deeper.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
But in this army, Wookiees are the other thing you want to look at. You could do something kind of like Jay, where you take Sabine and Clan Ren, because that's also getting closer to more threat saturation style. You could also look at Tauntauns. Tauntauns aren't in the limelight quite as much because they're a little less versatile. But I think they're right there. So
expensive.
I've been thinking, I brought this up on an episode. Jeremy and I were like looking at this, and I wonder if that up close and personal helps them out at all, giving them a dodge when they shoot at range 2. Like, I know they're a little expensive, but you could start stacking dodges even more now, right? And then even giving them like emergency transponder as well. And so now you're I think that's something that could help them, kind of stacking tokens, and that may help bring them back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Just my thoughts. But yeah, Tauntauns, Wookiees. So John, I think a lot of people, when they think of the Wookiees, and this is going to come up in Republic as well, but they continually think about I'm going to take the duelist Wookiees and I'm going to give them the shield. And I think you should, right? At least one unit. But if you're running a couple units, you may want to consider giving the second unit shooty powers and letting them shoot from a distance as well.
That you could also give the melee ones the bowcaster, and they hit really hard at range 2.
The bowcaster is amazing. Like, it's super good. It's ranged pierce, and ranged pierce is extremely valuable against red saves, which half of the lists out there are red saves.
Yeah.
Plus the Magna Guards that are going to be everywhere in the droid armies. So I prefer bowcasters over shields and over the long gun any day. I think it is the more expensive option of the 3, but I mean, it's because it's Pierce. It's worth it. It's 31 points and the other 2 are 26. The shield is a budget option. If you're tight on points, then I would go for it. It is definitely tricky balancing when you're going to have the shield up and when you're not.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, when you deploy, no reason not to have the shield up because you get armor 1. It's not affecting your speed at all because once you activate, you could change it. I think a trap might be that people want to remove the shield as they want to lower the shield and go speed 2 as soon as they activate. I think you need to stay in that armor 1 if you're advancing.
There is nothing more demoralizing than shooting into Wookiees. No, this is going to come up with Republic, who have access to a dodge and have armor 1 and are behind heavy cover. Dude, it's the worst.
Yeah, it's great.
It's the worst. But yeah, I think in the Rebel list, I like all those options. I think Sabine and the Mandos are good. I think Tons could come back. They have an option there. I think the other threat saturation for Rebels, and we'll probably talk about this Shadow Collective too, is the A5, like loading Luke up in the truck and just like dumping him in the middle of your enemy's front lines is I think there's something there, and we saw that with Evan with the lat at Adepticon, right? Like there's definitely something there.
I think that kind of list needs to have a way to be flexible, though.
Yeah.
I think you need to make sure that that's not your only trick, because you won't be able to just dump off Luke into any gun line, because some of those gun lines will have Vader or Dooku or Palpatine, and Luke will not enjoy it. He could still come out victorious in that, but it's not going to be the best option.
Yeah.
He's not quite the same as Vader, where Vader is best once he is buried. All his cards are really powerful once he's buried, whereas Luke has a lot of good dodge cards, other effects. And so Vader's kind of a mallet that you just want to smash into people's faces, whereas Luke can with Son of Skywalker and things like that. But all of Vader's command
disengage
cards
helps him
just
hop
want to get him
around.
in there.
So disengage is huge for wanting to bury Luke in there.
Yeah.
Because he may not one-shot a unit, but he'll remove 4 or 5 models, and then he'll just not even worry about it. Go to the next one. You will not be able to tie him down, because it'll take 3 units to tie him down.
Yeah.
So I think there is merit to pushing him in there.
Yeah.
I think choke is the biggest factor that tips it between Vader loves to be in there more than Luke, because Vader, in addition to 6 red dice, pierce 3, he's also just getting rid of someone's heavy weapon every time.
Yeah. I think we could, with that, transition to threat saturation empire, since we started talking about Vader. I think the main 2 ways is, the first way is the Vader dewbacks IRG list that used to be really popular. It's like Vader 3 dewbacks, 2 IRG. You can get to 10 activations, and you basically just
2
slam
IRG.
it. Yeah, you can go 1 to 2. I think you can go 11 activations if you do 1 IRG, and you can do 10 activations with 2 IRG. So it depends on what you want. The other option is the lat bomb with Vader. Like we were kind of talking about, Vader has 6 command cards that all want you to be in the mix, whether it's Master of Evil, his 1 pips, Fear and Deadman. He has a lot of things that he just wants to get in there. Also with Force Choke, one of Vader's issues is closing that gap. But when you have a lat, like Evan did at Adepticon, we saw he had multiple games where he just flew Vader in, and the whole game, Vader just tied down their entire gun line, while Evan's gun line was able to score. The other Force user for Empire is Palpatine. I don't think Palpatine lends himself as much into the threat saturation army. I think if you're pulling that strategy, you're really wanting to go Vader. Palpatine is great in the gun line because of pull the strings. You can run him alongside some snipers and core units, or even some people take him with Bosk as like a long range artillery. And I think Vader can also do well in a gun line. In particular, I think I prefer Commander Vader in the gun line because of his 1 pip and burst of speed. It helps close that gap. But
so freaking, I played in a local tournament this weekend.
Yeah.
And my final game was against Commander Vader, because he's the one that also has Compel, right?
Yep. So you can make your core cheaper by ignoring suppression.
In that tournament, before that game, I was running Yoda with Mind Trick. I panicked 4 different units between 2 games. I would have panicked maybe 4 more in that game, but Vader's just like, nah, we don't care.
Yeah.
Yep.
I have infinite courage. There were legit stacks of 8 and 7 and 6 suppression on several of his units. And Vader's like, nah, 2 actions. Go for it. Move, take a 12th suppression. Just, God, it's aggravating. So good. And he's like impossible to kill. He's gonna have he's gonna have 2 surge.
Double surges.
Yeah. He's got the defense of Palpatine and Yoda.
Yep.
But with 3 more health.
I think one thing that Kyle touched on one of the previous casts, because he played an operative Vader gun line at, what was that?
ACO.
Yep.
And
one of his complaints was he felt that it was hard he felt he had this long range gun line and then Vader. And there's a little bit of a disconnect that like Vader was kind of on his own going in. I think the one thing that this list changes is first you have Compel. So you can run a list that's just Stormtroopers at the Specialist and T-21s. So like really cheap, powerful core. They ignore suppression. And also with Burst of Speed and his 1 pip Implacable, you can fly through and close that gap in one turn. So with Operative Vader, right, he has speed 2, which is faster. But right, you can get 3 speed 2 moves with Implacable, but you're still going a little slower. But Commander Vader can either double speed 3 and close that gap, or with Implacable, like fly across the entire table and just be there. And so I think he uniquely lends himself a little bit better to the gun line, since he can just sit there, make everyone ignore suppression, be impossible to kill, and then one turn go from in the middle of your gun line into smack dab in the middle of your enemy's army.
Yeah.
I mean, can't Operative Vader also Implacable burst of speed?
He can, but you want to have stuff like Choke or Saber Throw or other upgrades, because he only has 2 Force upgrade slots.
And you have to push.
Operative Vader also has 7 health. So with Implacable, if you're
7
not getting
health, did he increase?
He did.
Yep.
What?
Well,
so I was just going to say it's
last 6
weaker because
months,
he has
John.
1 less than Commander Vader.
Yeah.
But that's to say, losing a health on Operative Vader is a bit more of a big deal than Commander Vader. So I think you need those 2 melee attacks. So if you're using it just for movement, it's less valuable. Whereas with Commander Vader, going from 8 health to 7 health, I think you can sacrifice, one of those Implacable activations just for a move.
Yeah, and then with Palpatine, I mean, I think you talked about this, but it's mostly just gunline. There's not a lot of aggressive stuff you could put with a Palpatine list that really works. I think some people have played with Palpatine Vader, but I think it's just too costly. Like, it seems like it's going to work and it would be nice, but I think most of the time it ends up running out of juice because you just don't have enough activations outside of those 2.
Yeah.
All right. And then, like things like we talked about this already, but like we said, you could do something with the lat to get even more aggressive. Like Evan had very good success with that at Adepticon. So that's for sure an option. And, I think some of the other aggressive, I think this is kind of an aggressive, like kind of a in your face gunline combo, but like I really kind of like the idea of a Commander Vader ATST. Like that is a really aggressive, like nasty combination that it doesn't always work, but when it does, it is real bad to have both of those things bearing down on your army.
Yeah. And I think one more army that's one of my favorites. I ran this at LVO, but is like a mix between both. You can take Operative Vader, 2 dewbacks, full gun line, and some snipers at 10 activations. And I really like that one because, in particular, new ways to motivate them on dewbacks is similar to Commander Vader, where the dewbacks can stay in your gun line fighting and then in one turn engage the enemy army. And so it kind of gives a threat so that Operative Vader can make it in after the dewbacks, but it also functions as a gun line. So if you want kind of the best of both worlds, but like it's less all in than a fully aggressive list, and it's less of a good gun line, but you can kind of toe that line quite nicely. I really enjoyed that army. So I think that's most of it for Empire. Do we want to move on to Republic?
Yeah. Yoda Wookiees is a nightmare. It's not just Yoda Wookiees, it's Padme Yoda Wookiees seems to be the real sweet spot that, Padme generating those tokens. And then I find with this one that the Wookiees can become a gun line as well, because you could put some Overwatch on them. They're sharing tokens from Padme, so they got the standby, so they're able, it's a real problem.
So fortunately for people that don't like it, I think Padme is only really good with the shooty Wooks because they could stay back and then Padme can still stay hidden.
Yeah.
As soon as you switch to melee Wookiees that want to run at you, Padme won't be able to share tokens and standbys unless she has line of sight to them.
Yep.
And once she has line of sight, then you have line of sight to shoot her, most likely. So it's extremely tricky to get Padme and not always possible for Padme to support melee Wookiees.
Yeah.
But shooty Wookiees she can support like crazy. And yes, it is devastating.
It's the worst. Because it's like you're not even thinking about it, and you're like, oh, range 3, standby Overwatch. You're like, oh god,
standby Overwatch, 2 extra aims from Padme.
Yep.
Targeting scopes on the Wookiees, so they're rerolling 3 each time. Like, that slot machine will hit gold eventually.
Yeah. It's bad. It's really bad.
There's the clone version of that too, which is typically Anakin, Padme, and then the gun line. This is like what Kyle and I think Evan and some other people ran at Adepticon. I think both of the gun line options do rely pretty heavily on Padme, because that's kind of, I think, Republic's gun line trick at the moment. Like if you go in the melee versions, you can run, like you said, just Anakin or just Yoda with a bunch of Wookiees. But the gun line option, I think Padme is kind of a linchpin for that right now.
Yeah. So, and then clones, big part of getting value of the clones is fire support. So Anakin wants orders all the time. So to make it work with Anakin, fortunately, you still have another commander slot.
Yeah.
You slot in a standard clone officer, clone commander, and he issues an order for free every turn. If you have 5s, then that's issuing 2 orders effectively every turn, which gives you 2 options for fire support every turn. It's gross.
Yeah, an Anakin saber throw fire supported is disgusting. If you catch something in the open, you can almost one-shot anything with that fire, that attack pool.
Yeah, Pierce 3, right? Pierce 3, Impact 3. Like, lots of dice.
Others are full health stormtrooper unit at 6 health. Boom, 7 hits with Pierce 3. Bye.
Yeah. Good luck rolling 6 out of 7 blocks to keep one model alive.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of Obi-Wan. So I don't really know. There's not a ton going on with him right now. I think he's just I mean, what do you guys think is the problem? Just probably overcosted without the right benefits for the army.
His command cards got like inadvertently hit, I think, because he like shared, because his 3-pip put out a bunch of surge tokens that now don't really get shared that effectively.
Yeah.
And so that whole card is just like worthless now. And he's a great unit, but he's only defensive. And
I think he's just a little expensive for what he does now.
Yeah.
After the changes, like you said, he lost some value in certain areas. And I think the clone token sharing really made Exemplar a lot more valuable, which is why we saw Padme and Anakin get a lot more play. And so I think Obi-Wan's a great unit, but I think just for what he does in the current state of Legion, he's a little expensive. I think he could go down, 10 points-ish, maybe a little more, and be good in there.
Yeah. What's he?
I don't even think
he's 170.
I think if you brought him,
that's what Operative Vader costs, right?
Yeah. Even if you brought him down 10 points, I don't
see
much of a place for him.
Yeah. Maybe 20 points.
And you're looking at 150 point force user.
I
think if he's the same cost as Anakin, I think if he's the same cost as Anakin, you might think more about what you want to take.
Yeah.
Even
I would try and make it work.
Yeah.
But really, he needs his 3-pip reworked too.
Yeah.
And I think since his main shtick is like guardianing, you need to make sure that his guardianing is not like he's not rolling worse defense dice. So you need always access to dodges and always access to surges, which means probably bring Padme.
Yeah.
So that because she's got the reliable and like vigilance and dodges can.
I think to make him viable, he needs to be like 125.
Holy crap.
Without any other changes.
All right, easy, Jay.
125. Hear me out.
I think
his 1-pip alone
any other
is
changes.
His 1-pip is worth 150.
Yeah, I think 155 with no changes. If they rework his 3-pip.
If you put him at 125, hear me out.
I'd play the crap out of him.
Yeah,
I'll play.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's more likely that he would see play, and then you could put him with Anakin and or Padme, and that could boost up Republic as a faction as well. Just my thoughts.
I think we need. Yeah, I don't know. It seems risky bringing a Force user down that far.
Yeah. Do you have any other
But
thoughts about Republic though? I think it's basically
Yoda.
if you want to go melee Wookiees, that's your only melee threat saturation. Gunline, it's kind of Padme standby
Yeah.
gunline
No,
are your two options.
Yoda with the gun line is pretty nasty.
Yeah.
JJ, I think it was JJ that just won Legion ladder with it. And I played very similar to his list this weekend. And the reason why, so a couple big reasons why Yoda gunline is gross, is luminous beings issues an order to everyone, which is great for control, but it also means everyone can fire support.
Yep.
And that's just disgusting. I mean, you fire support like 3 units with double aim, double surge behind it because Yoda can share his tokens.
Yep.
Like, it's gonna delete stuff and quick. On top of that, Yoda can say you have a fire support unit ready during luminous beings or whatever turn, but they're not quite at the range you want them to be. Yoda can just tell them to move forward, keeps their order token face up, so using guidance, and then they could fire support. He could even do it on his turn, right? He could go, he's like, oh, I like the spot that I'm at. Hey, clones, move a little closer. And then he shoots his blast gun, fire supported by 10 dice from a Z6, like with surge crit
Surge crit and blast.
And suppressive. Like, that's
you can
probably going to delete something too.
Yeah.
You can also set up the double tap at the blast, so you can blast 2 things in fire support.
You could. It takes that. It would have to be a non-Yoda card, or you'd have to get orders out another way because he can't attack during his 3 pip, and his 2 pip only issues 1 order besides himself. But it is possible. So Yoda's great.
Yoda's really good.
Yeah.
You could do the 3 pip up to 3 turns if you really need. It's great. You probably want to bring Barks to set up fire supports and to pad activations.
Bless you. That was a loud. That was a loud sneeze. Oh my gosh. Well.
All right, that's my pedestal for.
All right, for Yoda. All right, so let's get to Separatists.
Yeah, I think for Separatists, similarly, we could start with threat saturation because they have fewer melee threats than Empire and Rebels. I think for this, one key thing is obviously your Force users are Maul and Dooku. In threat saturation, your threat saturating unit is your IOG 100 Magna Guards.
Yep.
And because they have Retinue Commander, you're really only going to threat saturate with Dooku. So we saw, I think this is the army that AJST won the UK Worlds qualifier with. It gets like Dooku and 3 Magnas.
Okay.
I think that's basically your only Force user threat saturation army that Separatist has.
Could do Grievous with it, but no Force powers.
Yeah, so I guess if you
You'd
count Grievous as a Force user, it's like the same thing. Because that's actually the list I got 2nd place at the UK qualifier was a Grievous triple Magna.
Is Grievous decently cheaper than
155 points?
Oh, wow. Okay, they're really trying to make him work, huh?
Yeah.
40 points cheaper.
Yeah, so I think that's basically your option if you're going aggressive lightsaber user. Dooku or Grievous, triple Magnas. Not saying it's not good. I'm just saying that's the one way you're going to do a threat saturation.
I agree.
Whereas on the gunline side,
you give the guards. You give them the whip or the rocket launcher.
I give them rockets. I think you want the rockets for the.
You can have one whip.
Poke on the way in. Yeah, maybe one whip. Because it can be pretty spicy for slowing down enemy units. Yeah.
All right.
But gunline side, I think you have a whole bunch of options because this also opens up Maul. I think Maul uniquely because of Juyo Mastery is like one of the best Force users alongside a gunline since he can, double move saber throw, double move force push. He has all these options.
He could double move force push attack that no other Force user can.
Exactly. His saber throw is amazing. 4 red dice, impact 2, pierce 2. He has jump, which most relentless force users don't have jump, because that's Vader is the main relentless force user. So he's got a great saber throw pool. And with Maul, there's a few different ways you can do it. There's the kind of old school Maul B2s that Kyle ran a lot of. But I think the better list we've been seeing quite a bit of have success. I think this is an army that won LVO. I recently saw it do really well somewhere else, but it's Maul with spider droids and then a gun line. Basically, it's the spider droid Magna Guard gun line, but you forgot the Magnas for Maul. I mean, I think that list is super good. It won LVO, won another recent event. I think the more recent version that won a big event had a Magna in it as well. So it wasn't just Maul as a melee threat.
Yeah, he won ACO.
ACO, that was the winning list? Okay. Yeah.
Maul, Magna. I don't remember what else.
Nasty.
Yeah. I mean,
Maul's really good. Yeah.
Maul is one of the more flexible force users for sure.
I think in Separatists, Dooku and Grievous in the current state, you're probably doing in more of a threat saturation list with like Magnas, and you're trying to rush in. Whereas I think on the gunline side, that super tactical droid is just so good at supporting a gunline. Yeah. And I think Maul slots in there price wise really nicely.
Yeah, Separatists can afford anything they want.
Yeah. So I think there's fewer options. Like Dooku Grievous play one way, Maul plays a different way. But that being said, both of those lists are like top tier amazing. And you can kind of tune it, right? You can throw in a few more Magna Guards. Separatists, it's the same thing with every list. It's like a good stuff soup. You can kind of flex different things, change it around, but the base archetype is just so good.
Clones need to come down in points. Separatists need to come up.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. Just give me like 2 points to core units in both directions. Just a little bit. Maybe 3.
All right.
I do want to talk about battle cards for force users in general.
Well, we got one more faction you're forgetting about.
Let's do Shadow Collective real quick, and then
I guess it's not a faction. Battle Force.
It's a faction.
The wink wink, not faction.
Yeah.
So you got one force user option in this faction. So it's all going to revolve around that. You got the Shadow Collective Maul, which is the 6 command card Maul, basically the super duper Maul, which is amazing. What do you guys think about lists? I have a few list ideas myself, but
I think you got some dependency, right? I think if you're going gun line, you probably want Commander Maul with the Darksaber. I think if you're going aggressive threat,
well, that's the only way to be commander for Maul,
right? But he can also be an operative. So I was saying, if you wanted to go gun line, you would go Commander Maul.
I like him operative because you get the better saber throw.
Yeah. I think that's more the threat saturation one, I think.
Well, I disagree here because I think I really like the 4-dice saber throw alongside a gunline. Like the gunline list that I think is amazing is like 3 Pike Syndicate Capos, 6 Pike with either the Disruptors or Foot Soldiers. Then you have Maul with saber throw, push, vigilance, and tenacity. And you could even fit like 2 lead by examples on your Pikes in there to help deal with suppression. Because Maul has the move saber throw move or double move saber throw, I think that you kind of want the 4 red dice for the gun line. Whereas in threat saturation, I think you want the cunning more, right? Because you're not going to be saber throwing.
That's fair. Yeah.
So that's my quick piece. That Pike gun line looks so good, though. It's basically like the Luke gun line that Rebels has been doing, but now you have Maul and Pikes instead. I feel so. My general thought with Shadow Collective is we haven't seen much of it yet, so it's hard to know is good. But I feel like I'm very confident that that Pike Maul gun line is good because the Rebel parallel is so good, and it seems to do basically the same thing. Right? I'd say the new Maul is up there with Operative Luke as far as how good it is, and the new Pikes fill a very similar role.
As good as Luke? What?
Yeah, he can heal himself. He has 6 command cards.
He can heal himself after he's taken a wound, though. So that heal is kind of moot.
But
And
I mean, you got
6
Saber
health.
Throw with Juyo Mastery.
I'm not seeing it.
He's got Phantom
He's down to
Menace with the
courage,
close.
down to health, down to lightsaber die, no disengage, no master of the force, no charge.
real good.
He has half of a master of the force.
He
and
might
half
be.
Of a charge.
He might be good.
He's not Op Luke.
He's just not Op Luke good. Lucas. He came to the wrong fight.
And the pikes are like budget rebel DLTs too. Like they get their dodge one time, and it can dodge a crit. But I mean, the big trick against rebel DLTs is like you keep shooting the same one.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't really work against rebel DLTs because they keep getting their dodge back. Yeah. But if you shoot the same pike twice, then all of a sudden crits are getting through and removing pikes.
So you do have danger sense with helps a little bit, and with vigilance you can start double stacking. I think with pikes you could do like a rotating thing where your pikes in the back will shift forward and your front pikes will move back, so you can keep double stacking.
It's a lot of also with the moving around,
but with the capos also can hand out roughly 2 to 3 dodges each turn, so you can kind of get that effect in a roundabout way. The pikes also, when you're not in cover, hit harder because you can get the cash aim from the foot soldier or the surges from the capo, and they have a slightly harder hitting dice pool.
You could do the cash aim on anyone, right?
Yeah. But
I'm not seeing it.
You're not seeing it? I'm about it. That's if I was not moving soon and had time to build models, this is the one I would want to
run.
There's no critical on that disruptor either. Like critical's a big part of the DLT.
Well, I'd say though, if you were up against that list, you would not want to have armor on the other side. Good Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the other threat saturation one is the bus, right? Like the A5 is available for Shadow Collective. It's in the card pack too. There, you can get the card for it. Yeah, it's interesting because it's you can put Maul on the bus, do Maul's delivery service, right, and drop them off. I think you would probably put maybe the Mandos with Rook in there, and then I don't know what you would put for the core, but something.
Yeah, I think since they are a new faction, there's limited stuff you can run. I would agree that I think it's basically Maul, bus, and maybe like the Rook Mandos as another threat. They don't have any like melee specific units that you can just spam. Maybe you could argue about Black Sun Enforcers. But I really like the pikes. So I think if you're running too many Black Sun Enforcers, you're kind of missing out on the pikes. One thing you can do too, though, is like one Black Sun with the mag detonator? Is that the grenade? Yeah, mag det enforcer. And then a Vigo, and you can chuck that thing in the bus and then have Maul follow the bus, jump and run around because it's range 1, which is a bummer, but you have blast. What is it? And then how many dice you got?
3 black.
3 black plus 5 black, so 8 black and 4 whites. All with blast. It's a pretty gross dice pool.
Yeah.
And right, you're in a bus, so getting to range 1 isn't an issue anymore. You're just plopping them there.
Yeah, I think there's some interesting stuff. I don't know what else you could do. Maybe a couple Mandos and Maul. Maybe, I think there's an option there too. But yeah, I think there's some good options. All right. So John, you wanted to mention battlefield cards real quick. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What we got?
Force users are great. So at least objectives cards. Force users are great at a lot of objectives, but definitely not great at every objective.
Yeah.
Like bombing run specifically is tougher for Force users. And what other one? I guess they don't particularly love breakthrough either, unless you're doing like the threat saturation. We keep saying threat saturation. I'd like to call it melee saturation specifically.
Yeah.
Because you
No.
could have other big threats too. But we've been talking
Yeah.
mostly melee saturation.
What? No, we're gonna continue calling it threat saturation because that's what Lucas wants. Lucas keeps
Whoa.
calling it that, and he's only got a couple weeks left, pal. Let's just make him happy before he goes.
So melee saturation is great at breakthrough. Sabotage the moisture vaporators has a spot as well. Well, I mean, so yeah, you're gonna be blue player. So if you take sabotage the moisture vaporators, then you're probably going to want to play it. The safe way to play it is just to keep your force user back and kill anything that tries to come kill your vaporator. They're great at intercept, recover, key positions, and payload. Hostage, every force user. Yeah, if you're playing a force user against a non-force user, the force user is going to win hostage. Like it almost feels impossible.
Pushing and ragdolling the enemy hostage all over the place.
Same with recover the supplies. Like I don't see a way to beat a force user especially if they have burst of speed and force push, and you're trying to grab the middle box away from them without a force user.
I think Boba is one person that could stand up to him, but
he could try. Like he's gonna have to have his one pip ready, that's for sure. But yeah, it can be rough.
Things that you want to fight over the center of the map early on, force users really like. And in particular, I think one key thing about recover the supplies and hostage is the fact that those objectives have to be held by a unit, and force users, whether it's force push or Vader's might or Luke's one pip, serve your master, they have lots of ways of manipulating enemy units and moving them around. So in those objectives in particular, where it's early on, you want to be influencing the middle of the table. They're also just great at chucking that around.
Palpatine and Yoda, once your own unit has it, they can just be like, hey, come on, move another time.
Yeah.
Vader too with new ways.
Yep. And Luke with serve. Luke's his one pip works with friendly and enemy.
I think maybe one broad thing in general with force users is they're very valuable on objective focused matchups, I guess, where there's a central thing you want to move around or boost, whether it's your own hostage carrier or intercept controlling that center point. They're okay on key positions because often on the last turn, like Vader in particular is really good because you have Vader's might and implacable. So you have two different ways of getting stuff off the center. Yeah, you can compel all your stormtroopers.
Is the best keyword for key positions.
Yeah.
With infinite courage.
Well, all right.
What do you think? Basically just bombing run and breakthrough, the two you want to avoid.
Yeah. And then like there are considerations to make, like intercept and payload droids are extremely good at. So unless you are, just because the amount of bodies that they could swarm those two objectives with. So unless you have enough firepower that you're confident you can stem those two, then I would probably avoid those two objectives as well. Otherwise it's an uphill battle, or you need to veto it in the turn 0.
So I'll ask one more question and then we'll briefly go over what we think meta is going to look like. Do you think, maybe it's subjective to which list, but force users need a bid, yay or nay?
I feel like it's I don't know. It depends. They like a bid because they like their own hand, but I think they're not like some armies that really need to rely on that bid. So I think it kind of depends. For my list, it's kind of how many points do I have flexing around and what mood am I in if I'm going to bid.
If you're playing the melee saturation that needs to cross the table, then I think you need a bid. I hate that I'm saying this, but I think you need a bid, just like Kyle says, just for the choice between red and blue. You may not necessarily need your objectives, depending on the matchup and what you think he has. But if you're trying to win 6 games in a row at a tournament or more, you may need the table side. You may need to choose red because the tables won't be perfect. The gunline force user is slightly more passive and might be able to handle anything a little bit more well-roundedly. So you could probably go without a bid there. But for melee saturation, I think you need at least a 5+ point bid.
Yeah. All right. That's fair. I mean,
that's the only time you're going to hear me say that.
I have a bid in my list, but yeah, I agree for the same reasons, right? Like there's sometimes I'm like, I'd rather have table side than my, like, especially if I'm facing another force user, I'm like, they're going to have a similar battle deck to mine. So I'm going to go ahead and take the table side.
In the last 6 months, I have won like at least 10-20% of my games due to table side choice.
Yeah.
I'm like, this side has a great spot to sit and score intercept. I'm going to choose it.
Sometimes just having like a big LOS blocker that's slightly on your side that you can hide behind is huge. Massive.
All right. Okay, quickly, let's wrap this up. But let's talk about what we think the meta is going to be for the next couple months. This is pre swoop bikes and new battle forces. That's going to change stuff, but at least until those come out, which is roughly August.
Yes, we do have Shadow Collective though. Everything but swoop bikes.
I think I'm going to go first. I think as far as the regular factions go, you're going to see double bounty and you're going to see some sprinkling of Shadow Collective throughout the other list. Mostly I think you're mostly going to see these pikes in the lists. What do you guys think?
I think in the existing factions, I actually think single bounty is going to be a really big thing. I think a lot of people are going to play double bounty, but so I think in the existing factions, the armies that are already good are going to continue to be good. I don't think there's anything here that's going to shake up the meta that old stuff isn't good. But I do think some existing lists just get better. Like there's the list where it's like Kalani, 2 spiders, and a Magna Guard. I think you just slot Bosk in there now, and that list gets really gross and good. I also think Empire single bounty is really good. I want to play a Krennic Boba list. You can play with Krennic Boba, 6 stormtroopers with specialist T-21s, death troopers, and 2 snipers. It's a beefy 10 activations. I think something like that's gonna be real good. Might see some form of like Krosk coming back, which is Krennic Bosk. So I think we're gonna see, as far as stuff that's good, I think the single bounty lists will be the best new list in the existing factions. But I do think there's potential for double bounty, especially in Separatists. Like you can do like Kalani double bounty, which seems like it could be good. But I wouldn't count the single bounty. I think we're gonna have a lot of really good single bounty lists too.
I have a CIS list that I don't really want to say on the cast because I feel like we'll see it. But you know what? I'm gonna go ahead. It's right in line, Lucas, with what you were talking about, but it's Kalani Bosk, 6 battle droids with the E5S, which is the 1-4, 2 of the spider droids, with ion and attack protocols, and then 2 strike teams with the BX with the sniper. That's 12 activations. And it's literally everything has range 4.
Yeah. There's gonna be some gross stuff like that.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean that's pretty nasty just from a gunline perspective, and 12 activations is pretty strong.
Yeah, I don't think this is gonna shake up anything in Rebels since they didn't get any bounty hunters, and I don't see you running. So I think Rebels are gonna be the same. I think that's fine because Rebels have really good armies right now.
No, we don't. We have like 2, maybe just 1.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I think this gives Empire.
I
I
don't
think
know.
the old Empire lists are still good, but I think now you can play bounty hunters competitively. Um, Republic, there might be a spot for pikes in there with their standby sharing and dodge sharing. Right, pikes are a cheap core unit that they could include to help get their activation count up, and it can use those dodges from Padme. So I think that's a maybe. And Separatists, you basically just like slot Bosk into existing lists, and then you can of course do all sorts of Separatist soup, right? You just now to have 2 bounty hunters you can throw in Separatist soup.
Yeah, I mean, Bosk and Kalani, I think, is the thing that probably scares me the most, because there's a point where Bosk could have up to like potentially 11 to 12 aims with Kalani adding on to it. Like, oh dude, it's so nasty.
And perfect order control.
Yeah.
And he gets the surges because you're gonna have that perfect order control. And all these activations to pad out Bosk so you could do these super long range shots.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, even if you like, and then think about it, like if Bosk is attacking basically a character, or like, or even like Wookiees or something, if you put Hunter on them in addition, now like that lying in wait turn, like you're talking, you got 10 activation with this list that I made. It's 12 activations. If you're facing someone with 10 activations, you've potentially got 12 to 13 aim tokens on Bosk.
Yeah, it's like lying in wait with 12 activations, and 2 spider droids who also could have aims.
Yep.
Like you could straight up one shot a Jedi. Like they might try and last first and get into the line, and you're like, oh, from range 4, I'm just gonna shoot my 2 spiders and Bosk and just like one shot them like that. There's not many armies I think can at range 4 just like delete units with their activations after you've gone. So it's going to be,
it doesn't increase the number of dice though. It's just
no,
like Bosk is going to get his 5 crits with around like 5 or 6 aims, right? It doesn't, the 10th, 11th and 12th don't
for
make
sure.
a huge
It just
difference.
The aims help because dice dice are dice, right? So you're looking for those crits, you're looking to position them right. It doesn't give them any
but
more
5
dice.
But what I'm getting at is those 5 and 2 sets of 6 hits from the spiders. I don't think you count on one-shotting a Jedi with it. They're still 50%. They're still not getting pierced.
Count on.
There's still cover.
But no, you don't count on it. But I think the ability of having, plus all the E5S's with critical 1, then if you, let's say you do put the BX in there.
With the whole army shooting.
Yeah.
Yes. And if you're letting your Jedi get shot by a whole army,
right,
then you have messed up very badly.
I think notably it's just the fact that between the 2 spiders and Bosk, if they can see something at range 4, they can fairly reliably kill something. Like the core unit might follow to that. Bosk plus one other hit on us, lying in wait, Bosk hits an enemy spider and now they have 1 wound left, and that's just one thing you have to get through. I think it's just the scary fact that at range 4, this army can delete stuff. So you plink up with the DLT, and at this army, that DLT rebel unit is probably about to die. What about Shadow Collective? Do you think Shadow Collective will make a wave? I think we're going to see a lot of it because it's the new hotness. But do you think there's any lists in particular you guys think will win events?
Hard to tell. I think if anything, probably that, probably the one you were kind of talking about, that's the 3 capo commanders with Maul and 6 syndicate foot soldiers. That's 10 activations, and it's very, like you said, it's similar, though, like I would call it a diet version of what Rebels is running. But yeah, you could reliably, I think you could see that one take a couple, because I think it's just weird enough. Maybe Maul A55 or A5 or whatever it is. Like, I think there's an opportunity there too. I think those would be the 2 ones. I don't know. Gar Saxon, I don't know. Gar and Mandos doesn't seem as reliable, but yeah, Maul's just so good.
It's the paying for the red saves, and they have
Yeah.
1 health.
Yeah.
That hurts a lot on the Mandos. Same with Rebel Mandos. You pay a premium.
I think the problem is, meta usually means something you see repeated. Because you can one-off see probably like a Gar Saxon triple Mandalorian or maybe quadruple, right? Because you can run up to 4, right? So like you could potentially see a Gar Mando couple Pike, take a tournament just because everyone's gonna be like, what the hell is going on? But
I have a feeling we might see something with Maul, because I think Maul has a lot of tricks up his sleeve now.
He's just,
and I think you can figure out what's the best way to support him, whether it's a bus, whether it's a Pike gun line. I mean, I think it's a mix of both. Basically, like, are you all in on the Pike gun line, or is it like a little bit of Pike gun line with some bus? Yeah. I'm excited. I think TLDR is kind of, if you've been running something and having success, it's probably still going to be good. But there's new options with the bounty hunters, and especially in Separatists. It'll have to be seen, but the one thing that worries me is some of those boss gun lines, because those armies were already really good, and this seems to make them better, and they were arguably maybe the best list. So it makes me a little nervous. Yeah, it makes me a little nervous that the list that was arguably probably the best list in in the current meta might have gotten like a straight up buff. We shall see. Maybe Bosk being in Separatists will be the thing that pushes AMG to finally bump up the points on a few of those droid units and bring some Gar units down.
After it wins Gen Con and Nova, then maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just playing around, but you could do like a Gar Saxon, 3 Mandalorian super commandos with the marksman and the jetpack rockets. Gar with his combat shield, the flame projector, and the rifle, and you could put in a syndicate capo, and 4 syndicate foot soldiers for 10 activations at 792. So you could potentially throw underworld connections in there just to get the commands. But I mean, I could see that as something that would be very interesting, to just a bunch of Mandalorians, coming at you. They got range 3 and 4 threat with their rockets. I mean,
I think I kind of like Gar Saxon almost naked, because at 105 points, he's 5 Mando saves, and he's got that ranged shoe gun. Maybe just give him rockets for a little more range, but at least if you're doing Mando spam, I kind of like just making Gar as lean as possible, so that you can also give a Pike gun line to back him up.
Yeah.
Compel is pretty gross.
Yeah, Compel with Courage 1 units who have Danger Sense 2, so that you don't worry about suppression and you're ramping up that Danger Sense.
Yep.
Let's see how many activations can you get with that. You can get 9 activations with Gar Saxon, Naked Capo, 4 Pikes with the Disruptor, and 3 Mandos with the Marksman and Jetpack Rockets. Oh, you still have more points, actually. You can have two Syndicate Capos, so 10 activations.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty. So I think there's a lot of options. Again, I've been saying this for months now. This is legitimately the best Legion has ever been. With there's so many options. There's so many lists out there. There's so you used to be able to go and prepare for, you knew what was coming. So you could be like, all right, I'm going to bring counter it. And I just know everyone's going to have tauntauns. So I'm going to do this, or, double heavy, or I'm going to do this. And you could be able to, you have no idea what you're going to face anymore. One constant is CIS and Magna Guard, because they suck. I hate them so much, but everyone does. But yeah, so, the one constant is you're going to face at least one Magna Guard with ion spiders. That's for sure going to happen. Other than that, I have no idea what you would face out there. It's wild. And I think there's stuff that's not even being used. That like now that people are going to come down off the ion spider as much, like T-47s could make. I mean, they're still really good. Double T-47 is still super nasty, as long as there aren't, every list isn't an ion spiders list.
See, my worry is that since Bosk can now be running Separatists, we might be seeing more of that iron spider army. But we'll see. Maybe that we're really overestimating how good that combo is going to be.
I don't know.
But if not,
a range 4 gun line is generally pretty good.
Because I think the thing that's the biggest bummer is, at least looking all this on paper, we haven't seen how it plays out. I think we're like in the best balance ever. Like bounty hunters are great, force users are great, gun lines are good, melee is good, vehicles are good. But that spider droid army now with Bosk might just be like a tier above all that.
Yeah.
But it might be an easy fix at that point, at least, right? They just got to tune that one army down. And I think everything else seems really good. So
20 points to the spiders.
Yeah. Maybe not that much. Maybe like 5 points to the spiders, 5 to the Magnas. Just hit all those things a little bit. But
give me 20 or give me death.
But the hopeful part is, even if that list does end up being degenerate, it's not the worst place to be where you have one degenerate list and everything else is balanced, because all they have to do is fix that one list.
Yeah. I mean, I think even then, listen, Magnus are really good, but I think that there's still even options within that list, like BX droids, right? Bringing those back. And, it's crazy out there. It's crazy.
I'm excited. I just want to play my Krennic Boba Fett. I'm so excited to play that army. Boba Fett with cunning is gross.
Yeah, should be interesting. It'll be exciting. Yeah. It's too bad you're leaving the States.
My hope is they got all those world qualifiers out there and they're all paying for flights. So I'm gonna have to get real sweaty and try and win a flight so I can come back for Adepticon next year.
Somebody else on this podcast right now. Only a couple more chances.
Listen, I already got the invite. Now I just need the finances.
Right. Almost only a couple more.
I'm ready.
More chances.
I'm ready for Gen Con and Nova.
So Gen Con, Nova, LVO are really so far that we know.
Are they doing? Do you know how many invites they're giving away? Are they doing like top 8 all get invites or top 4?
I don't know. It'll probably be top 3 if I get 4th place.
Yeah, it'll probably be 2. I would guess
top 1 if I'm second place.
Top 2. I think the thing that I missed that they were doing was the burning. First place, or not burning. If first place has it, then they just pass it to the next player. I think that's a missed opportunity. But I don't know. I have no idea what to expect from Worlds. If you guys
are they doing pass
heard.
Downs?
Worlds,
or are they burning? Because
I think they're burning right now.
It depends on TO each time.
Oh, it's up to the TO? Okay.
Oh,
hey, TOs, announcement to the TOs, don't burn. Pass them down.
Yeah, geez. Let people have a chance. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be real interesting. I don't know. We haven't heard any of the formatting or how many people are going, but Worlds is going to be crazy. It's at Adepticon, if you haven't heard, next year. So that's going to be wild. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, boy.
Yeah.
But all right.
Maybe I'll just end up playing X-Wing Worlds.
Yeah, maybe.
You have an invite for X-Wing?
Not yet. But I'm playing at Nova and Gen Con for the X-Wing Worlds qualifier too.
All right. Well, cool. I think we can wrap this up. This was a good non-Kyle episode. We did it. We safely did an episode without Kyle. It was a struggle, but we made it to the end.
Who's gonna say the thing at the end?
Lucas, you do it.
Thing.
Give me the closing and then the final. Go ahead. What do you got?
No pressure.
We are the Notorious Scoundrels. I'm Lucas.
I'm Jay.
And I'm John Bushfax Bushman.
Stay fresh, cheese bags.